Cool. So welcome everybody to Designing a Good Agent in Copilot Studio. I did also, for me, being an Afrikaans person, reading that sentence, I was like, what? Wait. And then the first thing that came to my mind, like, who's a good agent? And that's why I got the little picture of who's a good boy. But yeah, so just picking up from obviously session 3 where we were building our first agent, this is kind of just a little bit of a level up. To take you from just a little bit further. So you've now built an agent, you started playing with it, and now you want to go ahead and actually build it according to best practices and what really makes a great agent so that you get the results that you want, or the users that will be using this agent get the results that they want. So let's start with first things first. A working agent isn't necessarily a good agent, right? We can give it a very vague instruction to say, just help users with policy documents. And the agent will probably give a response. In most instances, it will probably go and get that information off of the web if you told it that it can, and maybe hallucinate if it isn't fed any knowledge or tools or skills. As Alice mentioned, these are the things that these days are the makings of a good agent. So just comparing a working agent to a good agent, a working agent will definitely try its best to answer the question. If you have tools associated with the agent, it might pick a tool, sometimes the right one, sometimes not. It is a little bit harder to test because there's no clear guidelines on what it needs to follow. And it drifts, obviously, in its response. Whereas a good agent will choose the right tool at the right moment, and we'll go a little bit as we progress through this evening as to how do you build a good agent. It stays grounded in real sources. It also knows its limits, right? And it is testable by design. So something new that I've been picking up, it's probably been around for quite some time. It's just only recently that I've started using it, is the evaluation tool that you can now build in Copilot Studio. Not build, but it comes when you're building agents in Copilot Studio, and it helps you evaluate the response of your agents. So that is pretty neat. Cool. So typically they go, when researching what makes up a good agent, they kind of compare it to design your agent like you're onboarding a new hire. So I've seen a lot of people use this example, and I can kind of relate to this, right? So typically when you are onboarding someone new at a company, and let's say they are a junior, because what I've also heard people compare it to is an agent is very similar to a junior new hire. You kind of have to give them instructions to say, this is the job description, this is what you need to do. But you also need to tell them where they can find stuff, because some things are not common knowledge. Each company or enterprise business has their own way of working, their own way of storing data. So you need to share that knowledge on where things are stored and what they have access to. Then also you make available to this new hire the tools. In other words, what they are actually allowed to touch and what not. You're not going to, once someone new starts at a company, especially a junior new hire, you're not going to make them global admin of your Microsoft 365 environment, right? So you're going to equip them with the right tools. Then also triggers. So when they get called in. So this is kind of my prompt that I'm going to call you with. When I say sound the siren, this is how you know you should show up. And then obviously evaluation is typically, in a new hires example, it would be their performance review. So similar, when we build an agent, we also need to evaluate it to see that it performs as expected. So we'll be going based off of this principle with designing a good agent. So as Alice mentioned, Copilot Studio got a little bit of a redesign this year. And as you open the new experience, it pops up with what's new in Copilot Studio. So just some of the things that are new is There's now workflows with deeper agent integration. What does that mean? Is you can now add agents directly into workflows with new agent mode. This is very cool. We'll touch a little bit on that as we go along. It also supports Microsoft 365 Copilot actions. That is pretty amazing as well. You've also got more capable agents. So they're talking about the orchestrator, a new orchestrator that improves how agents follow instructions. This is also really, I agree with that. So that the whole work IQ, word IQ, you would see everything that is a new way of doing things has got this IQ associated with it. And it all feeds the agent the instructions on what it needs to do, and it gives it more capability to do the things that it needs to do. And like Al mentioned, the use of skills. Skills is really the way to go. I'm myself still learning how to do skills, how to start using skills, how to train your agent to kind of repetitively do what you want it to do. It also works with larger files, which is a great win. And then there's the unified experience. So Copilot Studio has redesigned the authoring experience, which brings agent creation, configuration, and testing all into one space. With that said, and we are talking about the new experience, the older experience is not getting left behind or just chucked to the side. It is also still getting updates, right? So new features include for the classic experience that GPT-5 is now generally available for European and United States regions. There's support for multi-agent orchestration, and then SharePoint metadata filters to refine the knowledge retrieval. So it's not like people are saying we're no longer dealing with classic. There is still the need, and there might be scenarios where you want to use classic Copilot versus using the new experience. Any questions so far before I move on during the slides? We still good? Great.
Just a few things on the updates.
Yeah.
And it might be noteworthy for if you have customers in the EU specifically. Now, remember, data sovereignty is a thing. Even in South Africa, data sovereignty is a thing. If the data centers in the EU are at capacity, they are going to offload the language model to somewhere else in the world. So,
okay, yeah, that's quite important to know.
The EU has a problem with that, right? So if they're at capacity in a data center, it's going to go to Canada or the US or somewhere else to do the inferencing or the tokenization, and then it'll bring it back into your tenant boundary or your data sovereignty boundary. That's what was one of the updates that came through after build. And the European Union is going to throw their toys, yes. And also you've got the Claude models available as well, so Sonar and a few others. Exactly the same thing. And when Karika jumps into a demo, she'll probably show that, where you've got a GPT-5.5. I don't know if we're going to get 5.6. That's the latest one. And I don't know if we're going to get Mythos or Fable, which is a more restricted
that's still
version.
disabled, isn't it?
Yeah, but they've been talking about, apparently they've got approval to now push it. I don't know if 5.6 or Fable is going to show up inside of Copilot Studio, but we should have 5.5 there, right? And also bear in mind, when you select a language model, it doesn't mean that the latest one is the best one. The latest one is just more complex, right? So if you look at token maxing inside of Claude, the latest, they do say it could generate up to or use up to 4 times what the previous build is or was.
100%. And what I like what they do in Claude, I haven't seen that in Copilot Studio, is that guidelines where it tells you when you select, it kind of gives you a guideline like this model is best for these type of queries and this model is best for deep research, for example. So you can also know kind of more or less, am I asking a silly question? Okay, fine, I'll use Sonnet. Am I asking something where I require to kind of get the latest of something and therefore use Opus?
from a general use perspective, this is, when we talk about a mixture of experts model, right? So if you look at stuff like Quen, right, which
Yes, yeah.
is heavily built on the MOE models, or at least from a design perspective, uh, if you were pivoting, and I think we've got a Foundry session somewhere, if you
Yeah.
pivot to Foundry, you can do all of those things. I mean, DeepSeek has got a new way of how it actually fetches data to make it faster.
Okay.
Literally, it dropped like 2-3 days ago.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I think of KLM. There's is a GLM52 also, when they start talking about quantization and a few other things,
Yeah, yeah.
and a mixture of experts things. What you find with local stuff is if you've got not in the traditional way that, well, I suppose in the traditional way that you would do orchestration, I would normally, not would normally, but in my lab, I actually have an orchestrator that decides, that makes the decision on which model to push it to. So if
Love
I'm
that.
pushing it to a 30 billion parameter model, Quen, right?
Yeah.
It will go there. Or in my case, I've got what they call Llama Swap. And that actually acts as the gateway to decide which model it's going to be sent to based on functionally what it does. Now, Copilot Studio is not there yet. I don't think so.
No, no.
But we would like to see it as the technology improves, which is every
Yeah.
month. I don't know how soon Microsoft goes, hey, we're going to give you this. But from an MOE perspective on the back end, offload it to a smaller model because the task is not as complex,
Correct,
right?
correct. Yeah.
Outside of, pumping everything to all the work IQ things from an integration
100%.
perspective. Yeah.
100%. And I think, Al, with just the way that you've explained it, I mean, currently as it is with the new experience and the new workflow experience, you could probably, as you like pointed to agents, kind of specify that, like use this
Yeah,
agent
the
with that's using
multi-agent
this
thing, yeah.
model. And yeah, because you can choose the different models for the agents that you're calling, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you could hypothetically set that up. Cool.
More so in Foundry for
Yeah,
now
yeah,
than what
exactly.
you're actually going to. Not I'm saying that you're going to have your separate conversation. Carry on. Sorry, I hijacked
Cool.
things.
No problem. Awesome. So this is also just a continuum of what we were saying of what's new. Just to explain a little more what orchestrator means. This is just a new way of reasoning what the agent does, how it plans, acts, observes, and reiterates that process all in one go. And obviously on the new experience, Claude Sonnet 4.6 is the default agent, whereas in the classic experience, the default agent is GPT 5.5, which I'll show when we go into a demo a little bit later. Also,
Model,
it
not
does.
agent.
Oh,
The default model, not agent.
model. Yes. Thank you. Thanks, Al. Thanks for listening. Really appreciate that. The different model, yes, and default models. Cool. It also does, so the new Copilot experience also does more on its own because it is using the Claude models. You'll see how it kind of goes into details, gives you the details of what it's busy doing, how it's iterating through the steps. It runs Python, JavaScript, Bash, and all of that in the back end. And then skills. Skills is obviously the latest one. I think that's probably one of the biggest changes when you go from the old experience to the or classic experience to the new experience. Is skills, and therefore topics. Topics is no longer available in the new experience. Now, for a lot of people who's obviously actively been building, Copilot Studio agents and have extensively used topics, I would be curious to see if they want to transition to the new experience, how they would bring in those topics. Would they bring it in as skills, or would they build tools to accommodate those features? But as I've mentioned, the new experience doesn't mean stop using the classic. There's still space for both and scenarios and use cases for both. Okay. And obviously, it's got the new experience as a 20% higher evaluation performance, as well as a 50% lower token usage. This is stats that is based on Microsoft's reported figures. So I am going to trust, I did that is AI generated, so I'm going to go with what they are saying. Do not quote me on that. Cool. So obviously the two experiences, as I've mentioned, you want to choose when to use which one. With the new experience, obviously you've got the build, preview, evaluate, and monitor. I actually like that little experience. I'll show you once we get into the demo, the little tabs that you get to kind of do preview, and you can do end user preview. So you can kind of use the agent as an end user would see it. I absolutely love that. Whereas in the classic experience, you've got topics, knowledge, actions, and settings. The settings bit in the new experience is a lot less than you get with the classic experience. But we'll go over that when I go into the practical show of both of them. Then obviously we've got instructions and reasoning drive behavior on the new experience, whereas with the classic experience, you've got explicit flows, conditions, and branching. That would be part of the topics as well. You've got enhanced orchestration for every agent on the new experience, where in the classic experience, you can actually configure the orchestration. And then the new experience is obviously based for Microsoft 365 data, and it is simpler from an authoring perspective. The classic experience is still good to use when you want deterministic control, because it's got that explicit flows, the configurable orchestration. So that's why the suggestion is be very sure on when to use which one, and we'll go over how you just make that decision in the guidelines of building a good agent. Here I've just got a little bit of a display on what the new experience looks like, but we'll go into a practical of what that looks like. You'll know you're in the new experience when that toggle is on. When you go to, I think it's copilotstudio.preview.microsoft, the new experience is on by default. And when you want to switch, it kind of asks you, why are you switching? Are you not happy? And all of that. It's very similar like how they forced us to start using the new Power Automate design instead of the old way. It's very, very forcible. But this one I appreciate because this one is a good new experience. Cool. So let's get into it. There's about 6 pillars into what makes a good agent. And the principles is following, once again, that example that I started off with. Remember that we are now, there's a new hire that's starting at the company, so we need to equip them with all the right things so that they can do their work effectively. So the first thing that we need to do for building a good agent is obviously identify the scenario before you build it. You need to, before you even start building or creating the agent, you need to know who it is for, at least 3 to 5 jobs of what is explicitly, what it should do, but also what is explicitly out of scope, what it must know. So think of knowledge, where you're pointing this agent to, and then obviously the actions it's allowed to take. So the tooling that we are exposing this agent to. And when we add these tools, also the actions that these tools can perform. So I'm sure most on call is familiar with MCP, Model Context Protocol. So we've got a whole lot of tools that connects to these MCPs, and they have a set of actions that they can perform, and you can switch those actions on and off. So when building an agent, it's very important to know about all of these things. If you can't answer all 4 of these questions, you don't have a proper use case yet. It's just that I would like my agent to do this. And I've seen so many clients be at this step and they just want an agent built, but they haven't really worked through or walked through the process, because in a lot of instances, because AI is still very much a hype, a lot of clients want an agent just for the sake of having an agent, where they could actually just have a Power Automate flow. Obviously, as agents are progressing, you need to really understand who's the audience that will be using this agent, what it can and cannot do, what resources it's pointing to, and the actions that it's allowed to perform. So that limitations that we spoke about. Cool. Pillar 2, instructions. Instructions really is the number one thing that people tend to get wrong when building agents. And these days, it's so easy to put instructions together because, and I'm sure a lot of people do that, is you kind of, if you have an idea of what it is that you want your agent to do, put that into the likes of GPT, Copilot, Claude, and ask it to generate instructions for you, right? And kind of review that, make sure that's typically what you want your agent to do. But instructions really is the number one quality lever as to how your agent will perform and how it would respond to the users using it. So obviously, you must put the orchestrator routes on names and descriptions. So this is typically when you'll see now when we're adding tools and things, there's with certain tools, the name and the description really does matter. Initially, when Copilot Studio just started with this whole agent development, the description didn't matter as much. The instructions were the core of that agent. But when adding tools, the description very much matter because that'll also give the agent a clear view on this is the tool that I need to call and this is not. So that brings me to the second point. Don't just list your tools. Say what it should do, not just what it should avoid. And you can reference objects with a /. I don't know if any of you on the call have done that when building agents or have seen that you can do that. If you do /, you've got access to tools, skills, and knowledge sources within your instructions. So it exposes those things for you. Cool. So just a little bit of an example, and this is something what I really like about the new experience is, and I'll show that for you for you when we're building skills and looking at the instructions, is they've actually started now giving samples of what good instructions look like or what good skills layout looks like. In the beginning, there was none of that. So I remember looking at other people doing a demo of agents, and then they've got this whole list of instructions, and I asked them, like, how did you even get to that? How did you know that that is what you could put in the instructions? They're like, no, I just asked GPT to do that. So like, okay, fine. That's not really a clear answer. But I like that it now gives an example. There's actually, I don't have that in my slides, but I think it's the Copilot prompt library. It's got a nice layout as to what makes up a good prompt. And the instructions follow that same principle, is where you there's a way that you construct your sentence where it gives it context, it gives it an instruction, it tells the agent what it is, what it wants as an outcome, and who it is for. So
look, from my perspective, the agents that I've built, I wouldn't call it agents. I'd call it, and it depends on what platform you're in, right? But with the new instructions, or at least the skills that you now have available to you inside a Copilot Studio, everything where I had to, and they mimic it. You've got custom GPTs in ChatGPT, inside of Perplexity, you've got spaces, and inside of Claude, you've got projects. Now, when you create a new project inside of Claude, little tab on the right-hand side that says instructions. I go to Perplexity and I say to Perplexity, write me an instruction for Claude, right? Which is the same as running a skill.
Yeah.
And it'll format it for you if you give it the right description. I describe 100%. What I want this thing to do or what the space is going to do, and it'll spit out a really concise list of instructions that I use inside of the skill. Yeah,
exactly.
Now, depending on what platform you're in, it's either instructions or skills. If you're sitting, inside a Hermes, or OpenClaw, or NemoClaw, or Odysseus, it's a skills.md file. And if you actually look at the way they structure it on a open sourced harness, not a paid for harness like this,
100%.
It actually creates it's just a folder structure. That's all it is. So if you look at GitHub, it's the same thing. It's a folder structure. You'll create the agent. It'll have a name called Jane the Researcher. And inside of that, it's got a folder, or it'll have a skills.md file. Copilot Studio is allowing you, and you could fake it before. You can kind of actually just prompt in Agent Builder. You can literally prompt it to build a skill, so that you've got a repeatable pattern for the agent to function as. outside of the memory stuff, because the memory should remember that it has a skill and it should perform or at least adhere to the instructions inside the skill, which is nice now with the new harness interface inside of Copilot Studio.
Correct. Correct. And I know also, as I'm talking, obviously I'm talking a lot on Copilot Studio, but to your point, Al, these guidelines aren't just for Copilot Studio. It's for building agents in any one of the tools that people are using, right? Because we know as it stands, everybody is using either a mix or one that they specifically lean towards because they feel that's the tool that's getting done what they want to have done. But well, yeah, this is the Microsoft 365 usage, so we're focusing on Microsoft tech. But there's so many different ways to do it, but the principles or the foundation of building these things remain the same across the board, right? It needs that clear instructions. So as shown in this little snippet here, to have a clear objective, kind of have response rules, and also say what it should do if it's the opposite of what we're saying. So use the FAQ only if not hours or billing, right? So kind of guide your agent as to this is how you respond, and if you can't, don't go and do your own thing, just do this, right? Well, any questions from anyone else, or comments or opinions, things that you've seen within your client base? Everyone's still good. Great. So as mentioned, also Markdown headings really work well because they parse better instead of just a wall of text. So instead of just feeding it a whole blurb of instructions that isn't really structured properly, it deals with structured content much better. So that just helps the agent be clear on what it needs to do. Okay. So the third pillar is obviously tools, understanding how the agents when the agents should call what. And that's where, as I've mentioned before, the name and description really decides what fires. So when you are adding tools to your agent, it's very important what you call it and what the description of that tool says. It shouldn't be something vague, because then it can call that tool at random. But if your tool is properly described, then it will know to call the right tool at the right time. And use the description to say what not to do as well. So for instance, for creating tickets and not just status lookups, and also use parameters in your instructions. Okay, this just help the agent to once again understand which tool to call, when and where. Grounding is very important. I was just in another call a little bit earlier where they actually explained context rot in such a cool way. So obviously when you're grounding your agent, you're giving it context, you're giving it knowledge to say that when you are looking for answers, please use this knowledge base. And the way that they explained it was, if I was standing in front of that person and they gave me a whole paragraph of instructions, but when I walk away, I'll probably remember only like 20 or 30% of that. Whereas if they give the information to me in a structured manner, I'm more likely to remember what it is that I need to refer to. So obviously grounding the data, pointing it to the right data sources, not just putting a SharePoint site there with a bunch of document libraries and go, please search this. You need to be very intentional with what you're pointing your agent to and what it's reading from. And then obviously Work IQ boosts a lot of that documents that it retrieves from the Microsoft 365 space. I mean, I've worked with Work IQ or all the IQ things now a little bit, and it really blows my mind away from what it for what it does. And I'm guessing the MCP controls that is associated with those things is what's responsible for doing these amazing things. But it really is very cool.
Look, work IQ from a semantic modeling or a semantic search perspective, for those that have been around as long as I have, we had the promise of Delve, right? When Delve was launched. And
Yeah,
for
I
those,
remember Delph actually.
yeah, for those that remember what Microsoft Graph was in the beginning, before it became this universal endpoint that you want to hit, right? Before it was that, Graph was actually it's a semantic model on the back end that connects your experience, your soul to the content, or not the content, but how you interact with people inside of Microsoft 365, what they have access to, mails, meetings, content,
Yeah.
chats, and they bring all of that experience together so that you've got a semantic model based
Mm,
on how you interact with Microsoft 365 and who you interact with. So all those
exactly.
interactions are stored.
Mm,
The relational side of those interactions, who you report to, the org chart, who you communicate with, it's all
yeah.
baked into that. And what is the young guy's name that runs Copilot? I forget his name. He looks 12. He's been pushing out a lot of videos on YouTube to talk about this IQ component. Work IQ, Foundry's got an IQ, and it's all about the IQ, right?
There's
So
two, is Ryan Cunningham, or it's because Ryan Cunningham is the one that's frequently on the stage, I think.
he looks 12. The one that looks 12, he just cut his hair recently. I forget his
Yes.
name.
Yeah.
He's been pushing out videos on how all of the new Copilot Studio things works, and he
Yeah.
does a good explanation or demoing it for how Work IQ connects all the dots.
Mm.
Previously, the artist previously known as Delve, the artist previously known as Graph.
Maybe Al, if you've got that link, you can share it in the chat for us as
I
well.
will I will go
Thanks.
find it while you carry on.
Oh, thanks. Cool. I'm going to do, I think, just 2 more slides and then we'll jump into a demo. So as I've mentioned as well, one of the other pillars is obviously a trigger on when something get triggered, but with the new experience in Copilot Studio, triggers are no longer available. They've moved into this workflow, this new workflow experience, which I'll also show you in a bit. But this typically is, it guides once again, or orchestrates once again, the actions that your agent should take. So based on maybe a question that's being asked, or maybe through adaptive cards, you are instructing the user to do something, and then it triggers to another workflow. All of this gets nicely integrated now. But once again, if we go back to those initial steps where we talked about building the scenario for building your agent, as we've discussed, is if you don't know your audience, know what it is that you want your agent to do, know what the outcome should and should not be. If you don't know those things yet, as you can see, when you start building an agent, there's a lot now that you can plug into it, and it's amazing what it's capable of doing. But if it's someone that just blindly builds an agent and says, review the policy document, it's so vague, and your users might end up feeling like this agent really is not giving me what I'm wanting it to do. So it's very important to really do the planning bit first. Might feel a little bit tedious, but once you got that, you have a clear path of what you want your agent to do. And that really makes the difference between just creating a working agent versus creating a good agent. Now, the last thing that I want to mention is that when obviously designing an agent, it's absolutely important to do testing. Testing shouldn't just be an afterthought. We have now got the evaluation tab. I'm going to show you some cool things that I saw with the evaluation tab. As shown here, it's got a quick conversation set. So what it does is it can actually set up with 10 quick questions, looking at what your agent's instructions are, what's connected to it from a tools perspective, what knowledge it's pointing to. It can actually quickly set up 10 questions to do the evaluation of your agent for you to kind of see if the results are what you expect it to be. And then you've got a retrace as well. So this is really, I like this evaluator a lot, because that kind of tells you whether your agent is working as expected or not with various scenarios. So with that said, I obviously went through a lot of slides. This is way more slides than what I typically present. I'm normally very hands-on from a Power Platform perspective, where I go, here's 2 slides. Okay, cool. Let's do the practical. But now I just want to jump into that experience and kind of show you the difference of what I've been saying about a working agent versus a good agent. Any questions while I switch over? We're still good? Cool.
His name is Charles Lama.
Oh, Charles Lama. Okay.
I call him Lama. I don't know how to say. Lamana is his surname.
It's Lamana, yeah.
He's done some demos on Copilot co-work, and I don't want you to think about co-work. He explains how work IQ and all those signals and things that are sucked in. It's quite nice to see that across the platform.
Lovely. Thanks, Al.
Rika, cool. I wanted to share something quickly if I can.
Yes, please.
I was testing an agent today, and because I'm not the subject matter expert, I know kind of what they want the output to be. So like the point of really trying to figure out and engage with the end user properly before you try building something is really, really important. But
yes.
For my own sanity, I created an item in one of the data sets to test it. And I got an answer back from Copilot saying, or from the agent, well, look what turned up in the data. The item group list actually contains a test entry, blah, blah, blah. And it like starts telling me off about it. It appears someone whose initials we won't mention has been thinking about jelly tots in the system. That was so cute.
Yeah.
Anyway, very sassy.
That is very sassy. Especially like with credentials we won't mention. It's like, oh yeah. Wow. It's you know you've designed a good agent when it starts dissing staff with you.
Yeah.
Hey? That's cute. Okay, cool. So just very quickly, for those of you on the call who hasn't seen the new experience yet, this is what it looks like. So you can see the new experience. Toggle is on. If you wanted to start creating a new agent, you would typically click on this block here that says agent, create an AI agent. And if you wanted to do a workflow, you would click on workflow. Something else that's really cool that is also new to me, it might have been around for a while, but today was the first time that I saw it, was agent ops. And if I quickly open the tab where that is shown, it actually gives you an overview of how many agents have been built in the old or new experience, how many of the agents are published, and also the Copilot credits that's been consumed. And then you can also filter by published, blocking, missing an owner, which is quite important, and also the agents that hasn't gone through an evaluation yet. I thought that was pretty neat. Especially for someone who doesn't necessarily live and breathe in the M365 admin center or using Agent 365. This is a good overview to have from a Copilot Studio perspective. Cool. So on the new experience, obviously, if we wanted to create a new agent, we would click on that block. No, don't go to the old experience. We want the new experience. Thank you very much. This is also because I'm having it open in the same window. It kind of gets confused as to which one I want to work with. Cool. So you would see when creating or clicking on that new agent block, it obviously looks vastly different from the way that we know agents work in the old experience. So if I just quickly go to agents here, and I'm hoping that it goes or sticks to the old experience. So the old experience would look like this, right? Where you've got your name, your description, agent status. So it's a lot of options, a lot of tabs, a lot of things that you can look at. Whereas the new experience, you've got the name, you've got your instructions, and all of the things that you can set or add to is neatly here on the right-hand side. So I've just been playing with an example a little bit. You would have seen that I've created just a policy buddy before the demo, because things can happen and things go wrong. And I wanted to just make sure that I do have the agents working and doing what they're supposed to be doing, because live demos can go horribly wrong. So what I've done is I created a agent initially where I called it, I'll call this one policy demo new. Okay, and then when we were talking about a working agent versus a good agent, is I've seen people who's created agents and this is what their instructions look like. Help employees with company policy questions. Okay, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's a good agent. This will work, but also what will happen? So if I just save this as it is, right? Let's just test this. And this is also when building agent, it's so important to test after every change that you make, because sometimes what we do is we build and then we add a whole bunch of things and then we test and it doesn't work. The best thing is to work through it iteratively, is start with something small, test it, then add one thing, test it. If that doesn't work, remove it, add whatever else you are thinking of adding. So working through that iteratively is also great. Something that I also wanted to show just before I jump into the preview of this agent, is you would notice that the model defaults to Claude Sonnet 4.6, as I've mentioned. However, you do have the option to choose from other models as well, right? You're not limited to just using that one. GPT 5.5 chat is the default model on the classic view. Okay. Cool. So here what we have is we've got a preview tab here. And this is what I mentioned, is you have an end user preview where you can toggle that on and you kind of get the experience. So if you hover over it, says you see your agent as end users will, you don't get the dev only details. So we'll switch that off. Cool. And then we're going to ask it a question now. I haven't given this agent any knowledge sources. I've given it very vague instructions. And now I'm going to ask it a question. Can I claim Uber costs if I worked late at a client site? So with the new experience, I actually tested it on both because I wanted to see if they kind of give me more or less the same answer. Obviously, it will be different because they're using different models. But what I like about the Claude models is it always tells you a little bit of what it was doing and how it got to the answer. So obviously it's saying it doesn't have access to Le Monde specific expense policy documents, so they're unable to give us a definitive answer. With the classic model, so what I noticed here is with this model, it didn't give me a link to some documentation, but with GPT 5.5, because in the old policy it's using that, when I asked it that, it actually pointed to a reference. I think it was an HR document somewhere in the UK that was saying that we don't have the information, but here's some guidelines that other people are following. And it gave me a link to that. So that was quite interesting. So once again, as we've mentioned, building a good agent means that you have to be very clear in your instructions and also feed it knowledge. So let's have a look at the instructions, or what instructions could typically look like. So good instructions and clear instructions typically look like this. So you have an objective of what the agent should, what the objective of the agent is, who the audience is, also very important, what's in scope, but also what's out of scope, and what's the response rules, as well as action requests and tone. So these are all things that really make up a good agent. So if we were to, let's say we'll add some knowledge and we'll add the instructions. I've just created a dummy policy document. Policy. Oh, that's the hands-on lab. We want to look at the policy. There we go. I've actually created a hands-on lab for anyone who wants to follow along with this sample and kind of find your way in building a good agent. So we're going to upload this policy document. This is typically what it looks like. Let me just drag this over here. I asked Claude to just design a dummy policy document. What I like is it says demo only, and it's fictional for Copilot Studio hands-on lab only. I actually like that. That it did that. Cool. So now we've got clear instructions, we've got knowledge. Shall we try and ask that question again to see if we get a better answer to the can I claim? So we're going to click on preview.
Smash it. Hulk smash. Yeah.
I appreciate the enthusiasm, Al.
Look, it's 6 o'clock on a Tuesday, right? It's very difficult to maintain that level, especially when there's no sugar or caffeine in my Coke.
Oh my goodness. So what I want you to notice now is now it's actually loaded a skill. I didn't build that skill or add this skill, right, to this agent. It's because it's using the Claude model where it says it's analyzing the PDF. I didn't add that skill. And now it says, yes, what the policy says, transport costs are claimable, and it tells me what I should do next, because now I've been very clear in how I want my agent to respond to the user as well when they ask these questions, and it's giving a citation to, or it's pointing to the document that it used where it got this response from. So just looking at that, now we want to evaluate our agent to make sure that it works as expected. We kind of want to test a little bit and kind of see what's the questions that we think our users could maybe ask. I haven't added any tools or skills to this agent yet. So typically what you could do is you can use the CV template and kind of upload your own questions or promptings, or you can do a quick conversation set, or you can just write some questions yourself. So you've got a lot of options on how to build out this evaluation. We'll start with a quick conversation set. So what it does is it's actually going to look at the instructions that I have, the knowledge that I have, and it's going to build out the questions to evaluate this agent. And these are typically the steps that you would follow in making sure that you build an agent that really works for your users. So here you can see it went ahead and asked some questions. So what is the company's leave policy? But if you click into it, you can see one of the questions is what's the company's leave policy, and kind of agent reference, like I can help with that. Are you looking for information about a specific type of leave, such as vacation, sick, or parental? It also says I'm mainly interested. Right?
Ach so.
Oh. Was that a question? Or not really?
No.
Okay, cool. So what it went ahead and did is almost like build out a conversation that it foresees that a user would typically have with this type of content. And then how do I apply for vacation? So what I like about this is, right, how do I apply for vacation leave specifically? This is where your agent now can start to kind of branch out. And this is where I'm just going to save this evaluation for now, and then I'll run it so that you can see how it runs. But while it's running, I'm going to hop over to workflows, because that's typically how your agent would then branch out. Someone would ask about what's the leave policy. That's typically, if you think about an HR scenario, that's typically where it starts. Like, what's the leave policy? Where do I, or how many leave days have I got left? So I'm going to start this evaluation. And while that's running, I'm going to head over to workflows. Okay, and we're going to click on new workflow. Cool. Anyone on the call worked or actually created a workflow in the new workflow experience yet?
Not yet. Very exciting.
It is very exciting. Okay, cool. So when I first saw this, I think I said to Al, it really gives off Nintig, innate in vibes. Almost said Nintigs there. Innate in vibes.
Yeah.
So typically when you start, you can choose how you want this flow to trigger, whether it is a manual trigger, where it's a recurrence, whether it's triggered from a connector, HTTP request received, or when an agent calls the workflow. So this you can trigger as a tool from an agent. Once again, this can be triggered through your instructions as well. So if someone, you can get to the point where they say, okay, I want book leave. So the user has gone through this thing of going through the policy, and now they know how many days they've got left, and now they want a book leave. So then you'll go when an agent calls the workflow. And what you'll do is when it calls the workflow called book leave, for an example, you can actually connect it to a different agent, or you can say at this stage, I want a human to review what's happening. So I'll use this one. I was actually quite curious as to what human review means, but here you can kind of assign it to someone, and you can choose the channel that it needs to assign it to via Teams or Outlook. So you can actually assign it to someone to approve or review, which I thought was quite neat. Or as I've mentioned, you can assign it to an agent. Now, what I liked about this is you can choose an agent of the existing ones that you have, or you can build a new agent right here and here, just in this space, where you can kind of say, this is the instructions, this is the model that I want this agent to use. And Al, this is kind of where I went based on the thing you mentioned earlier. If I wanted it to kind of choose what model to use, maybe I wanted to respond, but using a lesser model, then I can point to an agent, choose the lesser model, and that will kind of become the decider on which models to use and which not. They just become agents. But besides that, and yeah, once again, you get the full agent functionality. You can add some Microsoft IQ tools, knowledge. It's really going to create the agent for you in this space. Another thing that we have is obviously Loop, where things can run for a certain amount of items, loop through all of these actions, and then do another action. So we're really, really moving into that space where things are really becoming autonomous. You're not just doing stuff. The agents are becoming inside, or they're transgressing into such a way where they can actually go and do things on their own. You don't have to sit and watch them do it or click on buttons for things to happen.
Also, the loop that you're seeing in that loop that you're seeing inside the workflow, the agentic workflow stuff, not to be confused with loops, which is the new way to write prompts that the world is talking about when it comes to AI. And it's not to be confused with the way Hermes does a reinforced learning, where it learns through iterations. This is just a loop. Yeah. Loops are there so that the thing doesn't lose its mind, so that it can actually run through X amount of loops, and then come back and say, well, I don't know what you're talking about, or actually complete the task correctly.
Oh, wow. I did not know about this.
But not to be confused with the official AI term called loops.
Okay. That's good to know. Thanks, Al.
Not confusing at all.
Yeah, not confusing at all. Oh, my goodness. Okay, so I wanted to see what this looks like. There we go. I think it's running it again now. Such a bummer. But yeah, that concludes my demo. It is 18:30. And here you can see it kind of went through the questions. Some of it had passed, some of it had failed. And where it failed, you can actually see where it failed. So what I like about this is you can see one or more questions weren't answered, further checks were skipped because the relevance failed. And you can kind of see what's the response also that came back from these questions. I really like this evaluation tool to kind of see, or more or less expect what clients or users can ask and what the response of the agent would be to that. Let me quickly see if there's any more slides. No. Oh, let me share this one. So let's share the screen again. So obviously, let's build good agents. That's the moral of my story this evening. But also, if you wanted to learn more, this is specifically Copilot Studio based. You can go to learn.microsoft.com Copilot Studio. And there's also some cool GitHub labs that you can follow or walk through. that will teach you everything that I've spoken about this evening. And then there's great YouTube content, as Alef mentioned, and I'm sure shared in the chat as well. I haven't been monitoring the chat window. There's a lot of people that's showing some cool stuff. It's all about just learning together and staying up to date with everything that's happening. Let's build an agent to help us stay up to date.
Some comments from my side. We're quite excited about the new experience, the new proper harness experience that is available to you inside of Copilot Studio. It does, however, mean that you have to think about building agents differently.
Yeah.
Because it's quite a big change from what we saw 2 years ago when they launched Copilot Studio, which was just really a pivot from Power Virtual Agents, chatbots as a service, right?
I was just about to say, if you think about where Power Virtual Agents started.
So it was the robotic process automation platform from Microsoft. And then they realized they can't, compete against the likes of UiPath or automation anywhere. It was just give up the ghost and pivot, which they did at the right time. So yeah, some things to think about. One, instructions is probably the biggest thing, or skills, whatever you want to call it today. It gives your agent a lot of intelligence. Yeah. And then being able to pivot off the connectors and the MCPs, or APIs, MCPs, pick a flavor. It doesn't really matter. You're either going to use an MCP or an API.
100%.
Depends on what you want to call it or what Microsoft's calling it on the day. Now, the IQ stuff, you saw they referenced it as Microsoft IQ, Work IQ, doesn't really matter. If you are wanting to perform a function inside of Word, you'd connect it to Work IQ. Word IQ. Word IQ? Work IQ?
It's Word IQ, not to be confused with Work IQ. So that you've got your own. It actually makes me remember something now, which I didn't show. You've got Outlook IQ, you've got Word IQ, Power Apps IQ, Dataverse, and then Work. So we're still waiting for Excel, and we are still waiting for PowerPoint. But there's quite a few already of these IQs.
Not to be confused with Microsoft IQ, which was also in... Hold on, I want to share screen quickly.
Go for it.
Because it was quite annoying. And let's have a look at the Work IQ things.
Microsoft IQ is connecting to Work IQ and Foundry IQ.
And so it's Work IQ Word, right?
Yes. Oh my goodness, no, it's a lot.
Yeah. All right. So if we look at the tools, they're calling it tools, right? Although when you went into, was it here? Cancel, just open up another window. So if I add tools and I go to MCP and I search for work, you'll get a list of, so Work IQ Calendar, which is in Outlook, Work IQ Copilot, Work IQ Mail, which is also Outlook, Work IQ OneDrive, that's how they're naming it, Work IQ SharePoint, which I'm very excited about because you can do stuff with lists, Work IQ Teams. I don't know what the user is. Do you know what that icon is?
It looks like Viva.
Good. Yes, entirely possible. Work IQ for Word, and then obviously some third-party tools or MCPs actually use the same naming conventions. Then you've got all these connectors, so pull worksheets, and we've used it before as well. And there's a whole bunch of connectors, and then if you had built workflows, you can connect it to that.
You could reference it as a tool, yeah.
But you were Squad. Close. Where did you get that?
Agent.
Your one said Microsoft IQ here. So what if I add an agent?
Oh yeah, it was when you add a new when you're building an agent. It's on when you're creating a new agent.
But yours said Microsoft IQ here in one of the screens.
Yes, it did. Does yours have, oh, do I have something before you? That's exciting. Yeah, mine says Microsoft IQ on top of skills. Okay, laat ek my screen share.
On the top, yeah.
I've also got Microsoft IQ on mine.
Yeah. There we go.
There. I don't have that in my tenant.
Sorry.
So you've got more stuff.
So when I click that, you've got the work IQ and you've got Foundry IQ.
What is... okay. It's because you've probably got Foundry integration, maybe. I don't know.
No, I think it's just maybe the way it rolls out, Al.
That's distressing.
It's just very exciting for me.
Why is my environment not updated?
So I would like to know what's the difference between the two. So the difference between adding work IQ this way, right? Versus adding it, because that's Microsoft IQ, right? But we had the...
My work IQ icons are different to your work IQ icons. You see, you've got Fabric there as well, which I don't.
I'm so sorry, Al.
It's okay.
Yeah. So yeah, we've got a lot. We've got the Foundry. So this is the MCP. I just want to read the descriptions as to what's the difference here. So enables the agent to use enterprise knowledge sources from Azure AI Foundry to reason. And this one connects the agent to your organization's emails, chat files, and activity to deliver more relevant work context. So is this part only for adding context? And it says, note, when enabled, this feature adds the Work IQ Copilot MCP and Work IQ User MCP to your agent. Additional can be added from tools. Okay, so this one only adds the Work IQ Copilot MCP and the User MCP. You would still need to add the Outlook, the Word.
Karika, just touch that little button to on. Just switch it.
Yes.
It comes up with a little understanding thing. Does it not on your side?
No, I just switched it on and it does. Yeah.
Maybe because you've used it before. Let me screenshot what mine said and put it in the chat.
I know
why.
Okay, in the chat is what it said to me.
Okay. Let's quickly see. When you toggled it on?
Yeah.
Oh, that's very cool. Understanding work IQ and SharePoint knowledge.
I have it.
Oh, there we go, Al.
Your URL, if you head over to copilotstudio.microsoft.com and you hit the toggle to switch on the new experience, it's not giving you the preview experience, which is what you are seeing with Karika. So if you do head over to copilotstudio.microsoft.com tomorrow, or later tonight if you're that bored, and you don't see what Karika's showing us because it doesn't have the preview text in the URL.
That there's no Hiri.
Because you can switch to the new experience, number one, which is what you're looking at, and then you can have a preview version of said new experience as well.
That is also true.
Yeah, so yes, I also have it, Karika. Didn't last long, hey.
I still had it first.
No, you just had a different URL.
Cool. But yeah, so I think it's very important. And eventually, like Al mentioned, I think what's going to start getting important as well, completely off topic of building a good agent, but something to keep in mind is when we start building agents that is touching on these tools, the IQ tools, licensing becomes very important to discuss. To understand when you build an agent, what is it that your users will have access to and who will use it? Because I know with the classic experience, and this is something that I know I need to delve into a little bit deeper with, but with the classic experience, how the connectors used to work when connecting to that is if I built the agent, my non-licensed Copilot users could still use my agent, right? I don't know how that works when you are plugging IQ into that. I'm guessing they would also need to have premium.
Hit that Microsoft IQ Plus button again.
Okay.
Okay. See the little gray bars next to the name that says preview?
Yes.
Okay. Anything that's in preview, please don't push it to production.
Don't put it to production. No, I agree.
So yes, go to the preview side of things and play around with it. And if you look at all of those are in preview as well.
Yeah. So all of them that says preview.
Well, Foundry's not, which is great.
Yeah.
But be very wary when you actually build things that has the little preview thing. Although I haven't said that, I've seen features inside of Microsoft 365 that runs in preview for a year.
Yeah, that happens, eh? I've seen that as well. I'm so glad the Dataverse one is also not in preview because Dataverse does amazing things. Okay, cool. Any other questions from anyone?
Comments, concerns, statements, things you hate?